Hello valued friends, J-Rap here. For my first speaking video, I'll be performing a quick beat I made. If you like it, I invite you to stay afterwards and I will walk you through exactly how I made it. My goal here is to provide some insight into sampling, song structure, sound design, mixing, and mastering to hopefully make you into a better musician. As an aspiring beatmaker and content creator, I ask you to leave a comment with any tips or feedback on how I can improve my beat making or my videos. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy. Alright, let's go ahead and break down this beat. The first instrument we have here at the top is actually our ambient background noise, which I decided to throw in this beat to kind of give that chill, serene vibe. This background noise, it's a light rain. It comes from a sample pack from a company called Somatics, which is a great company. They have a lot of great sample packs, plugins. But this sample pack is actually free. It's called Life. It has a bunch of different ambient sounds that's great for all different kinds of music production. Let's take a listen to this one and we can see exactly what it sounds like by itself. See, you can hear the rain kind of hitting the leaves and some birds chirping in the background. Alright, in terms of mixing this ambient sound into the beat, one thing I wanted to avoid was making sure that the ambient sound doesn't overpower the rest of the beat. So, but at the same time, I wanted people to be able to hear the ambient sound and know it's there. So a technique that I use to kind of create the right balance is I use volume automation to have the ambient sound sample be a bit louder in the beginning, and then once more instruments and sounds kind of came into the beat, you dip that volume down to kind of then hide that sound more in the mix so it won't overpower anything. Let's give a quick look to see what that sounds like. Let me turn off the soloing. See, you can hear it duck down significantly and make room for the rest of the beat. In terms of mixing, the only other point to add here is towards the end to kind of give a certain rising effect or a climax effect before the end of the beat itself. The volume, while being low for the most of the beat, at the very end, kind of slowly, gradually building up a crescendo of volume right until where the beat ends and then kind of trailing off. That way it wouldn't sound good if we got to the end of the song and it just cut off. Alright, let's move to the next instrument. Let's talk about the drums, which is always the very first thing I put together when I make a beat. That kind of gives me a background so I can test various samples, sounds in the context of a beat to see if it sounds good. For this beat, we are using the Ableton drum rack, which is a stock plugin. In this view here, we can drag and drop various samples that we like. For this beat, we are using a sound pack called Murder Beats, which I got from splice.com. It sounds really good for a lot of different styles of music. hence why it is so popular. Once I drag and drop all the different sounds, I can just use MIDI notes to program a beat that I like. In terms of processing for this beat, we are first using a plugin called Somatics Origin. With this plugin, it's a multi-effect to give a kind of a vintage feel. We have some saturation added, and then this resample frequency is lowered a bit to kind of give a lower quality or that vintage lo-fi feel. This comes from a preset called Gritty MPC Drums. After that, we are using an Ableton stock plugin called Drum Bus, which does some of the same thing, but it is also quite different. In the sense that it's the same, it has a drive function that's what we're using to kind of make the beat hit a bit harder. And then this boom knob here kind of makes the bass, or the kick, hit a bit harder as well. After that, just using some EQ to kind of do a little bit of tone control, doing some boost up where the snare and the hi-hat, just to kind of make those sounds a little bit louder. And then towards the bass side, doing a little bit of a boost to give some tone to the kick, and then ducking some of the bass towards the bass frequencies to kind of remove some of the bassiness to the kick. Okay, so the next sound is our main sample that we are using for this beat. It is a piano sample, specifically called Vintage Piano Chopped Winter Blues in G sharp. I sliced this sample up and changed it a bit for this beat, so let's hear what it sounds like in its original form. I sliced up this sample using a plugin called Simpler, which is an Ableton stock plugin. You just drag and drop the sample into this view, and then it will slice the sample into different parts based off certain configurations, which you can change down here at the bottom. Once it slices all those different parts, it maps those different slices to keys on the keyboard or pads on a sample pad, and then you can just while your beat's playing in the background, you can just jam around and try to find a combination of slices that sounds good. And also it kind of sounds like your own as well. Also, to make this my own, I transposed this sample up to semitones, which changed the key from G sharp major to B flat major. Let's go ahead and hear what this sounds like soloed, so we can hear kind of what those sample chops look like. You can kind of see which samples are being played here. Okay, you're probably wondering where that scratch effect comes from, so let's go ahead and jump to that. So the bread and butter of this beat, or the part that I'm most excited to talk about, is this plugin here. It's called M Rhythmizer. It has a lot of different capabilities. It can add that scratch effect, or it can kind of add a gate effect, or a filter, and it does a few other things as well. So for this beat, we used a setting called Complex 2. But of course, we only wanted it to switch from being bypassed over to Complex 2 once it kind of came into that place before the beat was going to drop. To do that, in order to automate it, you can't use standard automation of this red line here, which is how you'd automate most things. You have to create a MIDI track here, and then you use MIDI notes to automate the sound. So if you go into here, clicking into the MIDI clip, you can see this C2 is bypassed, and then once you get to where the scratch effect should start, you have this C sharp 1, where it then activates that Complex 2 sound, and then you go back to this C2, or this very low C, and in order to bypass the sound again. Beyond that awesome sound, I'm just using some RC20 to kind of give some warmth to the sound. And then I'm using EQ8 to mainly EQ out those bass frequencies so it wouldn't clash with the kick or the bass guitar. And then maybe adding some EQ to the high end to give it a little bit more sparkle and clarity. For our next sound, we just have some simple chords that come in a little bit after where the beat drops, just to add some flavor, kind of change things up so it doesn't sound too constant. Let's go ahead and play it in the context of the whole beat. And it comes in right as the lead comes in. Alright, let's go ahead and solo these chords so we can see what they sound like on their own. They come from a software synth called Serum, extremely popular. It's amazing, a very versatile synth. This specifically comes from a sample pack actually called Echo Soundworks Haze Lo-Fi. The sound being called Keys Blanks. Sounds amazing. Let's see what it sounds like soloed. See, sounds amazing. After our Serum sound, we just have a simple organ that is occurring just at the very start of the beat and at the very end as well. This sound comes from a plugin called Lounge Lizard EP4, a very popular lo-fi electric piano organ plugin. This preset specifically is called Soft EP. Let's go ahead and listen to it in context with the beat. See, sounds pretty nice. A good way to kind of kick things off. And it does a similar thing at the end, just kind of one chord hit as the song ends, just to kind of give it a nice note to end things on. In terms of mixing, all we're doing again is just EQing out the bass. That way there's no clash of frequencies. Okay, next we have the bass, which is, for any beat that I'm creating, the bass is my favorite instrument to write. This is because, for one, I play bass guitar, so it has a special place in my heart. Two is, you can really flex your creative muscles when writing a bass line that meshes well with the sample and with the drums. One thing you just want to look out for is that, you know, with anything, whether it's the leads, bass, chords, it just always has to be in the same key as the original sample. That way, of course, it doesn't, sound bad. For this bass line, we are using a plugin called Ample Bass Lite. It is a software representation of a precision bass. It is free, which is amazing because it sounds so good. So being free, I recommend it for every music producer's toolbox. We are processing it through a Neural DSP plugin called Dark Glass Ultra. I use this primarily for, real bass guitar when I'm playing, practicing through my computer. But it sounds good processing these software bass sounds as well. Next, for further processing, we have a compressor just to ensure that the volume is consistent. Next is more for mixing, this BX subfilter. What this is doing is first taking a look at this tight punch knob. Everything under this 68 hertz is being cut. So what this is doing is basically creating a threshold where you're then cutting all the frequency under that threshold. This helps control the bass from being too boomy and muddy by kind of getting out those low frequencies. Then you can further edit the low end, which I actually dial it really far back, because for some reason as you dial that tight punch up, the bass frequencies that are above that threshold tend to actually get louder. So I dial back that low end, which kind of adds some additional control. In the mix, you can kind of judge to see is the bass line bassy enough. That's if you have any comments or feedback on that, I'd be very interested in your thoughts there. Next, we have another compressor. This compressor is the primary purpose is for side chaining the bass to the kick. What this does is it helps the bass and the drums, or the kick specifically, mesh well together. You want there to be a tight union between these two instruments because it makes up the rhythm of the beat. So what this does is as the kick plays, this compressor will duck the sound of the bass based on the settings you have here. Let me go ahead and solo this. It's really subtle. You may not be able to hear it, but you can kind of see it on this visualization here. See, on this graph here where that line ducks, you can see that's where the kick is. The kick is lining up with those ducks, and it is lowering the volume on every impact there that you can see. Okay, next we have the EQ. It is the M Dynamic EQ from Melda Productions. This is probably my most favorite EQ that I've ever used, even more so than EQ8. But I use them both. Even on this track, you'll see me use them both. I should probably get to be using one or the other. What's great about this is it has a great visualization. You can kind of, as you move your mouse, you can see all the different frequency ranges. You can go to areas. You can see these. If you click on frequencies under areas, you can see these different sections. So it's kind of like a learner's tool. Like for me, it's great to see this visualization, so I can see exactly which areas I'm raising or lowering. Usually, I will say you want to use your ears more so than sight. That's always the primary factor in driving the EQ. You might want to make sure it sounds good, not just that hey, I want to boost the bass, so I'm going to boost it in this bass area. You want to make sure that maybe use this bass as a guideline, and then for whatever sound you have, boost or lower the bass exactly what sounds good. But in this case, for this bass line, we have some boost in the mid to kind of give it some tone. And then, of course, we're removing all the high frequencies. That way, it's not clashing with those frequencies of all the other instruments that we have that are taking up those higher registers. Last, I will talk about kind of some of the ear candy that we have in this beat, just to kind of add some flavor, add some dynamics. First, we have a vocal sample. I got this from Splice. It actually is quite long. We can listen to what this sounds like in its original form. I can't get you off of my mind. Now I'm adding this into a simpler, and let me actually play it really quick and we can see which part of this sample I'm actually using. Let me solo it. Yeah, see? This sample right here is what I'm using. I'm just adding a little bit of delay to kind of give it a nice vibey effect. I am EQing up this F700 range where to help it kind of cut through the mix a bit. Then adding some upper clarity in the upper registers of the frequency range just to kind of give it some sparkle. Next, I use this sound on every single beat I do. I use it way too much. It's just a very simple whoosh effect. Let's go ahead and play it. That's it. Very simple. It helps in a lot of different ways. You can pair it with another riser. As you're kind of going into your drop for the beat, you have your riser going, and then the whoosh comes in right before the beat starts, just to give that rise and some extra dynamics, because we actually do have a riser here, and we're pairing both together just like that. Let's see if I can solo both, and we can see what that sounds like. It blends in. It's hard to hear the whoosh with the riser, but I feel like it does blend in rather nicely. And that kind of leads to our last sound that we have, which is our riser itself, just to kind of help go into the drop. Then in the middle, it kind of goes into the that lead run where the lead's kind of by itself for a second, and at the very end it goes into where the beat ends. Let me just play this part right here, because I add some effect to it, specifically delay. That's just some delay and reverb to once the beat ends, to keep it from being abrupt, it kind of adds a nice tail to the beat. Well, I really hope you enjoyed this video today. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and please comment if you have any feedback or tips that I can do to make this content more beneficial for you. Thanks again, and stay producing.